Hello, this is Myra Elaine on the Buying Space channel. I am reading in Exodus 25 about the items to be placed in the tabernacle and how they are to be made, and later we'll get into how they're to be arranged and their meanings. So, in Exodus chapter 25, I'm going to start reading in verse 31. And thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold, of beaten work shall the candlestick be made. The base and the branches, its cups, the knobs, the flowers, shall be of one piece with it. The 6 branches shall come out of the sides, 3 branches of the candlestick out of one side, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. 3 cups shall shape like almond blossoms, having a snack of almonds. In the candle branch, with a knob and a flower, so on the 6 branches that come out of the candlestick. And in the candlestick itself shall be 4 cups, shaped like almond blossoms, with its knobs and its dowers. And there shall be a knob under the 2 branches that come out of the same, and a knob under 2 branches that come out of the same, and a knob under 2 branches that come out of the same, for the 6th branch that proceeded out of the candlestick. Their knobs and their branches shall be out of one piece with it, and shall be one piece of beaten work of pure gold. And thou shalt make it 7 lamps, and there thy light, its lamps, it shall give light toward the body of it. It is tongs, and its snuff dishes shall be made of pure gold. Of the tablet of pure gold shall make it, and with all these vessels. And thou shalt make them after their pattern, which thou hast shown on the mount. Almonds are one of the first trees to blossom, and they're delicious. But another interesting fact, in Numbers, it talks about each tribe had a rod, the leader of each tribe. And Aaron's rod, and he was the leader of the Levites, his rod blossomed with almond blossoms. So the almond is a symbol of the Levite tribe. Now, when I lived on the north side, I had a menorah, and I lost it in the move, unfortunately. And I thought I had a defective menorah. Here is a stylized menorah, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cups. Well, this menorah, the menorah in the temple, had 3 branches on each side, and then the center piece. This one has 8. So the menorah I had on the north side really wasn't strictly a menorah. It was a temple candlestick. So the reason there were seven instead of nine, was it pointed towards creation and the honoring of the Shabbat with the lighter candle, which is what I've always called it. Later on, I may look up what that's actually called, because they have a word for each one. And also, besides the 7 days of creation with the 7 candlesticks, with the temple candlestick, it was to talk about future events. It was foreshadowing into the New Testament. Imagine that. Because the Old Testament is about Jesus Christ. The Old Testament is about the New Testament. The New Testament is about the Old Testament. Like Pentecost. People were there on the day of Pentecost to have a Jewish festival called the Feast of Weeks. And here we go. We go from the Torah, the beginning of the Bible, to Revelation, the end of the Bible. And remember, we got a candlestick in the temple with 7 cups, 7 branches. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, this is Revelation, yes, chapter 1. Suddenly I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet blast. It said, "Write in a book everything you see, and send it to the 7 churches in the city of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. And turn it to see who was speaking to me, and I saw 7 gold lampstands. Gold lampstands, 7, just like in the tabernacle. And standing in the middle of the lampstands was someone like the Son of Man." Jesus was standing in the middle of in this middle of the lampstands. He was wearing a long robe with gold sash across his chest. His head and hair were like white wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were flames of fire. His feet were like polished bronze refined in the furnace, and his voice thundered like mighty ocean waves. He held 7 stars in his right hand, and a sharp 2-edged sword came from his mouth, and his face was like the sun in all his brilliance. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as if I were dead, but he laid his right hand on me and said, "Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, but look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and the grave. Write down what you have seen, both things that are now happening, and the little things will happen, and the things that will happen. This is the meaning of the mystery of the 7 stars you saw in my right hand, and the 7 gold lampstands. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So the original temple lampstand represented the 7 churches in Revelation. How awesome is that? And there's another New Testament reading I want to make, because it goes to, it actually says what I've been saying for a while. I hadn't looked this up before the reading. I had to, someone had made reference to it. And I wanted to look up where it actually said this, because this is very relevant today and what we need to be doing as Christians. Oh, I might not be able to find it. Well, this isn't the last time we'll be talking about the lampstands, so I will save that. Oh, here it is. The parable of the 10 bridesmaids. Then in the kingdom of heaven will be like the 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegrooms. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 of them were wise. 5 who were foolish did not take enough oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil, and the bridegroom was delayed, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight they were aroused by a shout, "Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him." All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. When the 5 foolish ones asked about the others, "Please give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. Then those that were ready to go with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you. For you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or the hour of my return." For those Christians out there that have decided that the Lord is going to come back on a certain date, or you follow a preacher that says that Jesus is coming back on a certain date, that's exactly opposite of what Jesus said. He said, no one knows the day or the hour. Now, why would I bring this up? The bridesmaids had lampstands, and the Levites were in the temple, and before that in the tabernacle, and they had basically what you would call wickmen to keep the lights lit in the temple. And once a day they would burn incense, and there was continual light in the temple at night, and at other times of importance they kept the lights on in the lamp stand in the tabernacle. But they had to have oil, and that oil had to be pure. And that's what led to today's menorah. Now, when the early Christians went in to build their churches, their sanctuaries, they used the 7 candlesticks. They used the 7 oil lamps on their lampstands, as had been done in the tabernacle. Later, at the time of the Maccabees, there was a battle. And in the battle, they fought, and what the big deal about the red heifers is after you touch a dead body or you're involved in warfare, you're impure. So they only had one vessel of oil left that had been purified. And the purification process took so many days, so they didn't have time to make new oil for the lamps that were purified, because the rest of the oil had been defiled. And now one vessel of oil lasts 8 days. And that's why the menorah, which celebrates Hanukkah, which is the festival of lights, which celebrates the miracle of the oil, the one day of oil, lasting 8 days. So that's why we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with the 9th being the lighter candle. And old style menorahs would have connections, branches from the bottom of the cups to the base or to the stick. This one does not. This is a stylistic menorah with the Star of David on it. And people have all kinds of different menorahs that they celebrate Hanukkah with. And this is a Hanukkah lampstand or menorah. The one I had on the north side that I thought was weird was a temple or church style menorah. Now, why did the early church use, well, that happened before the early church was developing, before the Maccabees battle. So this was later in history. So when the early church first developed, the lampstands they took into their churches were the ones that were the same style as the ones that used in the tabernacle and the temple. And they believed that since Jesus had come and sacrificed himself, their temple was their church. And they continued that tradition of keeping the oil lamps. Was that necessary for Christianity? It was culturally continued because the people of the early church before Paul, one of the 7 churches was of Asia Minor, and Gentiles were slowly coming into the church during the time of Paul. But the people that first started the Christian churches were all Jewish. And how they worshiped God was a continuation of the tabernacle and the temple. And some of those customs have been lost. I would say that Messianic Jews are more likely to still have temple-style candlesticks in their churches and in their homes. And but the majority of people have the menorah candlesticks because it's been 2,000 years since the first Hanukkah. So we have this wonderful 8-cup lampstand or candlestick memorializing, that those 8 crazy nights that oil burned with just, and that candlestick with just one vial of oil, because the miracles did not stop at Mount Sinai. And I believe miracles happen today too. I believe in the power of prayer. And so when I look at this menorah with these 8 cups, it just makes me smile because it signifies to me the power of God. Now, I'm not Jewish, but I study the Torah, the Pentateuch, because it all points to Jesus Christ. It all points to the future. It all points to miracles. And this, coming to this point in our history, everyone should know this. Because if you don't understand this story and why the oil had to be pure, you don't understand the red heifers. You don't understand. If you don't understand the first 5 books of the Bible, you can't understand why people in the Middle East are so angry with each other. You can't understand the difference between Isaac and Ishmael, and you can't understand the difference between Jacob and Esau and their descendants, and how God provided the birthright and the blessing from Abraham to Jesus Christ himself. So the differences, not that we should emphasize the differences to cause conflict. We should know the differences to bring peace and understanding and salvation between the Jews and the Gentiles, between the Jews and the Muslims, between the Jews and the Christians, between the Muslims and the Christians. We're all sons of Abraham spiritually. And the people that are descended of Abraham physically also need to understand how we can come together and how this is a beautiful miracle. Even if you're a Syrian and you're a descendant of the people that were destroying the temple, you need to know the miracle of how God protected the Jewish ancestors. Even as from your ancestors. For the longest time, I thought my ancestry was German, and I always dealt with the knowledge that my cousins, my family left there long before the 1930s, like a couple hundred years, or 150 years before that. So, but I always dealt with the guilt that, I had cousins that were German that were probably, murdering Jews. And just knowing that my nationality was German. Actually, my genetic makeup is not German at all. When I found that out later, it was kind of a relief. But in reference to the current German people that might even have direct family from 3, 4, or 5 generations ago that were directly involved in the Holocaust, they're not guilty of that. I mean, they're guilty if they're anti-Semitic now, but they're not guilty for the sins of their father. And that compared to the, World War II era, things that happen to things that have happened this year. How do people move on from that level of death and destruction. How did the Jewish people move on from the people that were kidnapped? Well, they probably won't until their return. But after their return, how do they forgive that? They'll never forget October 7th. But will they be able to forgive and move on from it after this war's over? That's what we need to look to do. That's what we need to do to heal. And everybody has their heels dug in. How can we stop the war? Let's pray about it. Let's read our Bible and pray and try to understand the roots of what started all of this, and also understand what's happened in the last just 2 years, so we can pray intelligently and maybe ask for specific things. Like, for instance, the red heifers can be sacrificed at Shiloh. That doesn't threaten the Dome of the Rock. It's things we can think about that will bring peace and not division. You all have a wonderful and blessed day.